My name is Rebecca Johnson, and I love Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice. And I am publishing a series of videos exploring the reasons why I am such a fan of Zack Snyder's film. In this series, you'll find my thoughts on topics that matter to me, like Larry Fong's cinematography, character analysis on Lex Luthor and Lois Lane, the Christian imagery, what I find hopeful about the movie, and yes, I'll address the critical reception. So if you're interested in any of those topics, I hope you will get something out of this series and find out why Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice has had such a profound, heartfelt, and inspiring impact on my life. Welcome to the Duck Milk Prod YouTube channel. My name is Rebecca Johnson, and this live stream is part of a series I am calling Reading Reviews with Rebecca, which will analyze the critical reception of Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice through the lens of 38 of the negative reviews written by top critics from Rotten Tomatoes, one review at a time. This is not meant to belittle anyone's opinions, but rather serve as a study of art criticism and an examination. That's a difficult combination of words. And an examination into how we discuss film. Perhaps this endeavor will encourage us all to be better consumers of cinema. That's my hope and goal anyway. All right, well, today we're going to be reading through the review from the Toronto Star titled Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice, an Overblown Mess, review, written by Peter Howell. And the link, if you're interested in reading along with me, and I encourage you to do that, the link to this review is in the video description if you'd like to follow along and read it for yourself. And just as a note, if Peter Howell should ever see this video, I just want to say that I'm aiming to do this as civilly and analytically as possible, and I would ask that anyone watching live or posting in the comments would do the same. I'm simply taking a look at the criticism for and of BVS, now from an historical point of view, given that these reviews were used by Warner Brothers in their decision-making process regarding the DC Extended Universe. Due to the poor reviews for Batman v Superman, the tone and approach to the franchise were changed for Justice League, and ultimately it led to the destruction of the Snyderverse. Before I get into Peter Howell's thoughts, I'm sure there are some viewers who might think, Peter Howell is a film critic for a major news outlet. Who cares what you have to say, Rebecca? Which, given, I think that's a fair question. I really do. I think you should know more about me. So I've prepared a little background video for you to watch and enjoy, and I will be back to read the review. I graduated from the University of Alabama, Roll Tide, with a degree in telecommunications and film and a focus on broadcast television production. While I've never been to film school, in my television and production experience, I've learned about and have lots of practice in operating cameras, shot composition, and editing. Lighting, green screen, and audio are my weak spots, admittedly, but I've been working on those. After working in local TV news, running cameras, and working in production, I got a job at Turner, now Warner Media, or whatever they're calling themselves now, for 14 years. I worked with networks, or brands as they call them now, like TBS, TNT, Adult Swim, Cartoon Network, Boomerang, True TV, and Turner Classic Movies as a video encoding specialist. I also did a fair amount of closed captioning work and DVD and Blu-ray QC. In case you are wondering how I podcasted about Supergirl and the DCEU films while working for a Time Warner company, I actually got permission and clearance from my human resources representative. If you think I wouldn't criticize stories that were under the same corporate umbrella, that was never a problem nor a concern for me. If I thought the Supergirl TV series or a DCEU film had faults, I said so. In the last 17 years, I have served as a director, technical director, and camera operator at my local church in a live production capacity. I've been a video editor for 17 years, having worked in Avid, Final Cut, and Premiere Pro CC. In my day job, I shoot and edit news and documentary-style video content that involves interviews and narrative storytelling. I'm also currently an amateur photographer and am aiming to improve my efforts in still photography. You can check out my work over at Instagram at @TheDerbyKid. Link is in the video description below. While discussing these film reviews, music and film scores will inevitably come up. It may be good to know that in my life I have played piano, handbells, clarinet, bass clarinet, bassoon, acoustic guitar, and have even started learning how to play the ukulele. I've played in marching bands, symphonic bands, and wind ensembles, and have sung in many choirs. While I don't consider myself a world-class musician, far from it actually, I do know some things about music and am a big fan of film scores and soundtracks. In addition to my production and musical experience, I have had lots of experience in art criticism. I've been podcasting about television and film since 2009 and do so on a regular basis with Supergirl Radio, a podcast I co-host about the CW Supergirl TV series. I am also a writing contributor to the Justice League Universe podcast that offers analysis on the DCEU films. You might even hear my voice occasionally in recordings and audio commentaries over there. I'm not an expert, but I care deeply about film, television, storytelling, and art. So I hope this gives you a background on where I'm coming from. Okay, now that we've gotten that out of the way, let's get right into Peter Howell's review of Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice. And I usually like to start with the headlines or titles of these pieces because I think sometimes that's really important because you get the main thrust of what they want to say in the headline. And a lot of times people will just read that and then they don't read the rest of the review. So I think these headlines or titles are really important. And so I wanted to take a quick look at this one because I have some thoughts about it. So the Toronto Star's title for this is Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice, an overblown mess, review. Which to me seems like there's some weird punctuation that's happening. It seems like a janky run-on thought. So I decided I would take it upon myself to redo it a little bit to make it look a little better because I think there's a way to present that same amount of information, same wording, but just punctuate it a little differently, and it makes it look like somebody actually put some thought into it instead of just having a run-on thought there. So this is my edit of the title. I would do Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice, an overblown mess, and then put review in the why am I blanking on the parentheses? Put a review in the parentheses. I just think that looks a little better from what is in the review because I've never seen it something written like this where you can't really tell what what the title is. So that I thought was kind of strange right off the bat with this review. So it's not my review and I'm not the editor of the piece, so who cares what I think about the title, but I did think that was strangely punctuated and I personally would have done it a little differently. Okay, so in the meat of the review, he starts off with, quote, like some overhyped Vegas brawl, Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice keeps everybody waiting for the title bout, unquote. I hate to be a real stickler. I really do. I hate to be a stickler on these things. But this is a professional review, a professional critic's review of a big film from what I understand, an outlet that's worthy to be considered a top critic. And strangely, in that very first sentence, there is not a space between justice and keeps, which I think is strange, how the very first sentence that is presented has an editing problem. So you would have thought that somebody would have caught that because it's right there at the top, but nobody seemed to edit that and make that a little better. Just pointing it out. Also in this little section here, the critic is attempting to speak for everyone in the audience or the potential audience by including everyone in this opening sentence. And I really have a big beef with critics mentioning everyone from their standpoint. They like to write in what they think, and then they just think everybody's going to think that. Well, that's not true. Not everybody thinks the way they do. And so I really wish that critics would not speak for everyone in the audience, but that will be a recurring thing that we will see in a lot of these reviews. So it's just strange to me. How do you know what I'm going to take away from this as an audience member? How do you know what I'm going to be thinking? So that's one of my pet peeves about these reviews, but it happens quite a lot. So continuing on, he writes, quote, when it finally arrives 2 hours into this superhero sludge pile, you realize that it's also been falsely billed. And I'm not referring to the monster movie that pops out of nowhere, unquote. Okay, so how exactly is Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice a superhero sludge pile, unquote? There's no elaboration on that description. We're not told why it's a sludge pile, what makes it a sludge pile, any examples of it being a sludge pile. It's just thrown out there as if it's the gospel truth, and we're supposed to accept it. I also have a question about, why does making a film a monster movie come across as a negative? Monster movies are very popular. I don't know why that's a negative thing. Or is he upset because his issue is that it pops out of nowhere? Well, my question is, does it pop out of nowhere? Doomsday has a logical progression and is created by other aspects of the plot and film. For example, Lex Luthor's quest for knowledge and his willingness to break Kryptonian regulations. He also gets the body of Zod from the government, and Doomsday was created from Zod's body, who we know died in a previous film and story point. So we saw Zod die in Man of Steel, and then his body in this next story, this next installment of that story in the second film. I say second film because it's a continuation of Henry Cavill's Superman story. We see the the logical progression of how Doomsday would have been created. So I don't know so much about it being popping in out of nowhere. I think it's actually explained in great detail by the film. So Peter Howell also continues on. He says, quote, "The film should really be called Batman and Superman v. the Audience, because the real beatdown isn't on men in tights, but on the popcorn chewing suckers fidgeting in their seats," unquote. This is cropping up again. This guy especially likes to speak for the audience. I really wish, instead of writing Batman and Superman v. the Audience, he should have just written Batman and Superman v. me, Peter Howell, because he's talking about his opinions as if everyone shares them. I certainly didn't. So me not agreeing with him just completely eviscerates his whole point of view here. So I think that in the future, I would love it if critics would not try to speak for everyone who watches this film, because they are not the voice of everyone who watches this film. Also, I think it's a little strange that this guy calls his readers popcorn chewing suckers. I brought some popcorn with me for this review. So I don't know if anybody else wants to eat some popcorn while I'm reading the review. I'll try not to eat it the whole time, because nobody wants to see me eating popcorn and reading a review with popcorn all up in my mouth. But I guess I'm a popcorn chewing sucker, because I went to go see it 15 times in the theater. So according to Peter Howell, that's a bad thing. If I enjoyed a film and went to see it a lot and ate popcorn while I was there, that's a bad thing, according to Peter Howell. I just think it's unfortunate that he calls his readers popcorn chewing suckers. I guess editors are okay with that, for you to demean the audience and the reader. But I guess that is what happened. Okay, I'm going to stop at this point and see what's going on in the chat. So David also proposes a rewrite of the title and the headline, Batman ... Justice dash an overblown mess parentheses review. I like that. I think you could make that work too. I just think the use of dashes and parentheses make it a little prettier, make it's easier to read from the eyes. So I think that's might have to take some water after eating that popcorn. So I think you can make that easier to read on the eyes just by a few little changes. Let's see. David also says, someone dig in and check and see if this guy reviewed Civil War. That's actually a good thing to cross-check to see if some of these critics had the same problems in similar films or films that are set in the same genre. That's also a good thing to check. Let's see. Hi, Rachel. Thank you for joining me this afternoon. And please feel free to share your thoughts. She says, I'm usually at work in the afternoons during these reviews, but I actually got the day off today. Looking forward to your thoughts. Well, I hope you have a great day off. Thanks for including me in your day off. You definitely didn't have to do that. But I hope you have a great day. All right, let's see. Ectoplasmic Entity, which is a great name, says, when I saw it in theaters, I thought, why don't people like it? It's awesome. That's that's one of my questions too. I've been trying to figure that out since the year 2016, the year of our Lord 2016. I've been trying to answer that question myself. Let's see. Andy says, calling suckers in a professional review is the last thing a critic should ever do. That is literally attacking the readers who click and visit to the site you depend on. So I agree. I think it's uncalled for. Even if it was meant as a joke, which maybe it was. It's hard to tell the tone of some of these things when they're in writing. But I still don't think you should do that personally. That just seems in bad form, bad taste and bad form. Let's see if there are any other comments before I move on. Okay, let's keep going in the review. Apparently, according to this post, it's only a 2-minute review, but it may take me longer than 2 minutes to read it. So, okay, let's see where I left off. Okay, so continuing on, he writes, quote, this is what happens when a studio, Warner Brothers, in this case, is so desperate for a DC Comics franchise like the Marvel Comics universe goldmine, it throws everything but the kitchen sink into a single movie, and somebody actually does get clonked with the sink in this one, unquote. I'll give Peter points for paying attention to the moment when Batman hit Superman with a sink, because that's at least engaging with something that happened in the film, and it's something true that happened in the film. But how does Warner Brothers throw everything but the kitchen sink into a single movie, and also throw the kitchen sink at someone in the movie? Because he says they threw everything but the kitchen sink, but then they actually did throw the kitchen sink. So that's a strange sentence. It seems like a contradictory thought to me. I don't think it's a well-written sentence, but that might just be my personal taste. He continues on, quote, Zack Snyder is perfectly capable of directing genre pictures, 300, Dawn of the Dead, and also smoothly integrating multiple protagonists and backstories into a narrative. His opening montage for Watchmen, delighted, unquote. I really appreciate that Peter is willing to admit when Zack Snyder's work is good. He mentions that 300, Dawn of the Dead, and Watchmen had strong elements. But even if he praises Zack Snyder, I don't think he should be writing it. This is the same complaint. I don't think he should be writing it as if Watchmen delighted everyone. There are probably people out there, I don't know any of them, but I'm sure there are people out there that did not enjoy Watchmen. He's still, even when he's praising Zack Snyder, he's still speaking on behalf of the entire audience, as if he's speaking for everyone, of every single person who watched the film, when he really should only be writing about himself and his perspective. So I guess that's how he writes these reviews, but I think it's the wrong approach. I think he should be more addressing it from his point of view, not speaking for the audience. So Peter continues, quote, he's lost his grip here, talking about Zack Snyder. That's understandable considering the script by Chris Terrio and David S. Goyer juggles the intro of 2 franchise recruits, Ben Affleck's beefy and broody Batman and Gal Gadot's thrilling Wonder Woman, while also continuing Henry Cavill's Superman saga that underwhelmed with Man of Steel in 2013. Newcomers include Jesse Eisenberg as Supes' main villain, Lex Luthor, more obnoxious than sinister, unquote. Okay, breaking this down. How did Zack Snyder lose his grip with BVS? Not explained. Is he saying that the screenwriting was bad? Just saying that Chris Terrio and David S. Goyer were juggling characters doesn't mean that the writing is bad. You could still be juggling characters and do a really good job. So I don't understand how that correlates. But I suppose that that's what Peter's trying to convey here, that juggling is a bad thing. I think jugglers would tell you that you can be really successful and be a juggler. So I don't understand how that's that's inherently a bad thing. Okay, and so if I engage in his point that they're juggling characters and their writing is bad because of it, how How did they fail in their juggling act with the writing? How? What was bad about it? What was so bad about the writing that they were juggling and failing? Not explained. How did Man of Steel underwhelm? Not explained. Also, is Peter still writing that everyone was underwhelmed by Man of Steel or just him? Because I wasn't underwhelmed by Man of Steel. I was actually overwhelmed by Man of Steel. And it also did quite well at the box office, enough to warrant another film. It also, I believe, if I remember my statistics correctly, Man of Steel also did well on home video afterwards when it came out on DVD and Blu-ray. So how did it underwhelm? Did it just underwhelm Peter Howell? I don't know. It's not explained. Also, isn't Lex Luthor always obnoxious? Is that just me? Isn't that one of Lex Luthor's greatest traits in most portrayals, that he is an obnoxious character? I don't understand why this is a negative description of Jesse's portrayal of him. The obnoxious part of Lex Luthor, I think, is one of his best qualities for an evil villain. And also, if Peter didn't like Jesse Eisenberg's portrayal of Lex Luthor, I would prefer it if he would just write that and explain why. Why didn't you like his Lex Luthor? Just saying he's obnoxious is not a critique of the portrayal, especially when he's a villain. Villains, just by their very nature, should be obnoxious. They're not supposed to be great people. So I don't think that's really quite the critique that Peter Howell thinks that it is. Let's see. I'm going to stop right here and see if anybody has any thoughts in the chat before I move on. Mask of Shy says, Happy Father's Day for everyone here. Yes, it is Father's Day today. So thank you to all the dads out there. You're doing a great job. Keep it up. And let's see. David says, to anyone in the podcasting community, it could be a nice episode to analyze just how much the MCU built things up. Was it done well or was it overhyped? That's a really interesting question, because a lot of times, especially in these reviews, they will be comparing this film and the DCEU to the MCU quite a bit. And at this point in time in 2016, I can kind of understand why that would have been the case. I still don't think it warrants being included into a review that has nothing to do with the actual film. But that's a great question, because you could probably argue both ways for that. So yeah, I think that would be really cool to hear. Okay, so let's continue on with the review. Peter writes, quote, Snyder and his co-conspirators have the germ of a good idea. The title grudge match begins out of Batman's rage and anguish over the high civilian death toll caused by Superman's aerial battle with General Zod at the end of Man of Steel. This is the rare blockbuster that stops to count collateral damage, while also pondering deep thoughts about deities and devils and how no one stays good in this world. Unquote. Germ of an idea. Where have I read that phrase before? Y'all remember that BVS review from The Atlantic from Christopher Orr? That seems familiar to me. Germ of an idea. Oh yeah, that's exactly what Christopher Orr wrote. So in The Atlantic, the sentence was, there's the germ of an interesting idea here. And then the Toronto Star says, Snyder and his co-conspirators have the germ of a good idea. Now, I'm not saying that they all conspired with each other to create talking points. I'm not saying that. I just think it's a little weird that two different reviews from two different outlets said almost the exact same thing. You probably would never have noticed it unless you were a crazy person like me who reads all these reviews and notices it. But I do think that there's the possibility that some of these critics might have talked to each other about it. I don't know. I'm a conspiracy theorist, so I'm just letting y'all know that is a thing that happened, that this is out there. But I just find it weird. That's all I can say about it. I just find it weird. that they would write almost identical things there. And maybe that's something that film critics will write. That, oh, there's a germ of an idea here. This could have been really interesting. There's a really interesting germ here. You could find another way to write that. You've used all of your germ of an idea phrases. All right, so we'll continue on. Okay, so his thoughts about Batman and anger. What he's writing about why Batman is angry about Superman is actually true. He's actually being thoughtful about what is happening in this story. Peter even mentions how the film deals with collateral damage and the conflicts and the themes that the characters experience. And I think this is refreshing. He's engaging with the story in the film. A lot of these critiques, a lot of these reviews, they just throw out these labels and throw out these sentences, but they're not actually diving into the story a lot of the time. So I actually like the aspect of this paragraph where he is talking about the deities and the devils and quoting a line from the film, "No one stays good in this world," and how Batman is angry because of Superman's fight with Zod. Those are all true things. Those are all things that you could actually, dig through and dive into if you really wanted to. He doesn't really want to. He doesn't go into any real depth about that. But he at least does mention that. So I will give him credit for that part of the paragraph. All right, so continuing on, Peter Howell writes, quote, "If only the film actually had depth." What if this review had depth? If only the film actually had depth. I'm sorry, that was mean. I shouldn't have said that. So I'm going to repeat this. If only the film actually had depth, along with a little levity to lighten the bulk in the script, the visual murk, and the sonic overkill, unquote. All right. So Howell is saying that the film is dealing with heavy subjects in one paragraph, and then it says it has no depth. That's a little weird. Maybe if he dug into what the dialogue was saying and what the visuals were showing, he'd see that the film does have a lot of depth within it. I saw the film 15 times in the theater. Every time I saw it, I saw something new. I saw a new connection. Even afterwards, when I would watch it at home, I would pick up on dialogue that connected to this other scene and these visuals that would connect to other visuals. Sometimes I think if you don't see things, it's because you're not maybe putting a little effort into it. I think the problem with a lot of these critical reviews is that these people probably only saw Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice once before writing about them. Some might argue they wrote the review before they saw the film, but I'm not gonna do that here. I'm not gonna argue that here. I'm not gonna say that they might have written these reviews based off of a trailer. I'm not saying that. I'm going to assume that they saw the film once, and this was their written response of it. And so that's how I'm going to take it with this review. So a lot of the depth that I personally found in BVS came from multiple viewings. So I can kind of understand it to agree that these people see it once, and then they have a reaction to it, and then they don't go back and revisit it. That can be a problem. I mean, there are several films that's happened to me before where I've seen a film, didn't like it, and then I would, not like it for a while, and then I'd go back and watch it again, and somehow my opinion of the film would change. That happened to me with Anchorman. That happened to me with Romeo and Michelle's High School Reunion. Those two stick out in my mind almost immediately. And it's funny; those are two comedies. But I didn't like them on first viewing. And then when something clicked on that next viewing that I was like, actually, I do like this. So I don't know, maybe that would be beneficial for critics to be able to view these films more than once, because that maybe could give them the experience that I had in the theater where I got something more out of it every time. Okay. Peter also says he uses the descriptions. He talks about levity, visual murk, and sonic overkill. I would love an explanation for how any of these things are represented in BVS. I don't know what he's talking about. He doesn't give any examples. I guess we're just going to have to take his word for it that those are things that are actually part of the film. I would just be guessing if I had to guess about what he's talking about here. I don't know. Let's see. We'll get to the levity bit in a second because that's sort of how he ends this review. But what does visual murk mean? Could Peter not see the visuals? Were they too gloomy? We don't have any examples, so I don't know. I really wish I knew what he was talking about here. Sonic overkill. I know a lot of these reviews will talk about how bombastic the score was, but they never give examples. You know, a lot of the times in the BVS score, the sonic overkill and the bombastic nature of it is intentional. It's based on story and character. I'm thinking of the music during the nightmare sequence. It's supposed to be a little chaotic and loud and annoying to a degree, because this is a world in which Darkseid has taken over and Superman is evil. It's supposed to be like that. Even with Batman's theme, where it's sort of dun, 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 like it's supposed to be angry and loud, because that's where Batman is right now in his character. He's angry. He wants revenge. It's not supposed to be like a cutesy little theme. Like that's representing his character. So when he uses the two words sonic overkill, I know what he's talking about to a degree. There are parts of the score that are loud and could be described as sonic overkill, but he doesn't mention this. He doesn't give a description or an example of how this is played in the film. So the reader is just going to have to guess. If you get this far in the review, you're just guessing at what he's talking about with sonic overkill. It's also disregarding all the quieter moments in the film. I'm thinking of, the Clark Kent piano theme with Martha Kent on the farm, or when Superman dies and there's choral singing. So there's a variety of things. Even Lex Luthor's awesome theme with the violins and the syncopation. That's not sonic overkill. So I think they use those descriptions to make it sound like the entire score is like that, when in reality it's not. Okay, so I'm going to stop right here and go through the chat real quick. Let's see. Let's see. I'm going to try to read through some of these. All right. Let's see. Yeah, Andy talks about the word germ, how it feels icky. Yeah, it is. I mean, germs are, it's not a great thing to imagine. You don't want germs. So especially in our, kind of moving towards post-COVID-19 age that we're living in, you don't want germs. So I guess you could have an interesting germ. I don't know. Let's see. Yeah, and Mask of Shy says, "Why don't they give examples?" Yeah, I've talked about this in another review. I assume that they don't want to give examples because they don't want to spoil anything, but I still maintain that you can talk about things without giving away a plot detail or a twist or something like that. So for me, I think it's weird and unacceptable, actually, to not describe what you're talking about not being able to say what you mean. I think that's very, I don't want to say irresponsible, but maybe irresponsible to your reader, negligent to the reader not to give, and negligent to the filmmaker. Because I'm sure the filmmaker is like reading that. I mean, if Zack Snyder read this, he'd be like, "What are you talking about? could you point to something?" So I think that is something of a responsibility to back up why you say the things that you do. So that's what I would want and expect from a review like this. All right, so we're nearing the end of the review. This one might actually go pretty quick. So there's a sentence in here where Peter says, quote, "I counted exactly one joke already revealed in the trailer," unquote. Counted exactly one joke, just one. This is a very familiar talking point to me, because in 2016, after BVS was released in theaters, I was actually on a panel talking about DC films and TV shows at Dragon Con. and a very similar argument was made.
I considered that Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice had a lot of humor in it.
That's like 3 times. There's only one joke in the whole film.
I guess I'll have to dissent on this one.
Don't you like being called a liar for telling the truth? I love it. It's one of my favorite things. So, okay. My first question about that, just that real short clip, which was actually recorded by some friends of mine who were just recording the panel so that I could have it later. And they told me later after the panel was over that this guy called me a liar and got up and left for saying BVS had humor in it. So it sounded like when I went through there to try to get the captions in there correctly, it sounded like he said he had seen it 23 times, which, I mean, for a guy who doesn't seem to like the film, watching it 23 times is a strange thing. Also, I saw it. I mentioned earlier, I saw it 15 times in the theater. I knew at that point there was there was humor in it. So it's weird to me that people would come away with the idea that there was only one joke in the film. And I hate to tell Peter, and the guy, I don't know his name, God bless him, he might be a fine, upstanding gentleman, I don't know. But the guy who called me a liar, they're either bad at math or they don't have a sense of humor, because there are moments of levity that are in the film intended to make the viewer laugh and sort of break up some of the tension and the dramatic stakes that are happening. So what I've done is I've collected some moments of humor throughout BBS that I think most people would find funny. Not everybody's going to think everything is, not everybody is going to think that the same things are funny. But I tried to find clips from the film that would make most people laugh or at least smile. And I don't want to explain jokes too much because I think it ruins their appeal and sort of takes away some of the power of the comedy. But what I think is interesting here, if we're going to disprove this claim that there's only one joke in the film, all we have to do is find two. I think we can do it. I don't know about anybody else, but I think we can do it. So I'm going to play a couple of clips just to get in there to show that there was humor, that there were little comedy bits in the film. And we'll talk afterwards about what characters were used and how they were used in doing multiple things throughout these scenes. So let's go to Perry White first.
Crime wave in Gotham. Other breaking news. Water wet.
One of my favorite things about that clip is at the very end, after Perry makes his little water wet, you can see Jenny laughing at him because she's probably known all about Gotham and all the crime that's in there. So that's number one. We've already found one joke. So let's see if we can find another one. Let's go to Perry again.
Economy Plus.
Coach.
Oh, I would say that's two. That feels like two to me. I mean, Perry's a pretty good mind for this. Let's go to another one.
Where does he go, Jenny?
I don't know.
I'm gonna count that as three because it makes me laugh that Jenny's like, I don't know, Perry. I don't know where he's going. I don't know. It feels like Jenny has to deal with that all the time because Jenny and Perry seem to work together quite a bit. So that makes me laugh. And if it doesn't make you laugh, I'm sorry. I really wish that would make you laugh because it makes me laugh enormously. So I'm going to count that as three. Since we're really cooking with Perry, let's go to another one.
It's called a bullet. You shoot people with them.
Number four. I'm going to give it to Perry on that one. I think most people would find that funny because he was really snarky to Lois. I hate to really go overboard with Perry, but let's do one more with Perry.
Let's copy all right.
I definitely would count that as number five for Perry White really giving it to Clark Kent about his his daily reporting duties. That makes me laugh because I also, there's the debate on whether or not Perry in BVS knows that Clark Kent is Superman, and there's the bit of me. I hate to say the part of me, but because all of me thinks this. All of me thinks that Perry, if he does know, is sort of yanking Clark's chain just because he can. He can make Superman write these sports stories if he wants to. So I like that idea. And Lawrence Fishburne, well, what a gem in this film. All right, so we're going to continue on. I've counted at least 5 at this point. So let's go to General Swanwick, who we all know later is Martian Manhunter, but we don't know that in this film. So we'll go to him real quick.
You know, with balls like yours, you belong in here.
All right, number 6. We are really cooking, y'all. We were told there was only one joke in this film, but I feel like we're fine. We're digging deep. All right, so let's go to some of the Batman moments. Surprisingly, Batman had a lot of moments of levity and laughs. So where are we? Are we 6 now? I think we're 6. So let's continue on with Batman. Batman's in trouble. he is punched a Superman who has his powers back. So I think that's number 7. Let's continue on with Batman and roll with him for a bit.
You find the spear?
I've been a little busy.
He's been busy, Superman. He's been doing stuff. So that's number 8. In that same scene, let's dig into another one.
She with you?
I thought she was with you.
I think that's the one joke that they think that is in the film, but it's not the only joke. So I think we're at 9. Someone correct me if I've been miscounting in the chat, but let's keep going. Bruce Wayne's got one more, I think, at least in him.
I like those shoes.
He likes those shoes, Mercy Graves. He's totally, completely drunk, and he just wandered in there. It's not like he's been trying to steal something from Lex Luthor. But he really likes your shoes, genuinely. So I think that might be 10. I've got 3 clips left. We're going to go to some Lex Luthor moments and see what Lex has to say.
Wow, that is a good grip. You should not pick a fight with this person.
It's funny because he does pick a fight with that person. So that's good stuff. All right, so one more from Lex. This has a little bit of Diana in there. And this one is more, you have to have some knowledge of Wonder Woman's story in order to think this is funny. But if you do, it's pretty fun.
And for that, he was given a thunderbolt. True!
And apparently that clip doesn't work.
And for that, he was given a thunderbolt. True! Hey, that seems unfair.
There we go. That played all right. Yeah, so Diana rolling her eyes. I think most people thought that was funny when they saw that in the theater. And we're going to end up with Martha Kent because, you know, Marthas are wonderful. So we're going to end in our little time of comedy here, and we'll tally up the total when we come back from this.
I figured the cape.
All right, so how many did we have in just this little experiment that we did? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. So I personally found 13 moments of levity, of humor in the film. And these were not even all of the bits that I would have pointed to say were funny. I know when I saw it in the theater, a lot of times people would laugh after Superman busts through the wall. He he saves Lois by taking the general through the wall. A lot of people laughed at that moment. It sort of makes me chuckle when Lois says, "I'm not a lady, I'm a journalist." Some of those, even there's a lot of moments with Alfred, they were a little too long to play, so I didn't include those. But Alfred had a lot of great bits of comic relief. So just in that little experiment, we've totally disproven this "there was only one joke" argument that people are putting forth, whether it be the guy at DragonCon who called me a liar or Peter Howell, who wrote this review from the Toronto Star. So if you're in the chat, let me know what your favorite moment of comedy or humor in Batman v Superman is. Maybe I missed some of your favorites. Let me know in the chat. And before I get to that, let's round out this review and get to the end. So Peter ends this with saying, I think this is his last bit here, quote, "Let's hope they're saving the laughs for Justice League Part 1 due next year, for which Batman v Superman amounts to little more than an Peter using big words, than an elephantine or elephantine, an innervating scene setter, unquote. Oh man, Justice League Part 1. Man, that was the good old days. We almost had 2 Justice League movies. But that didn't end up happening, partially because of reviews like this one. So thanks, Peter, for making sure that didn't happen. But also, what does Justice League Part 1 have to do with his critiques, which are actually little of in this piece? There's not a lot that's actually mentioned in this piece. What does Justice League Part 1 have to do with Batman v Superman? How does that have anything to do with actually engaging with the film and writing a review of what happened on screen? It doesn't. It has nothing to do with it. Only if you were going to say something about the nightmare sequence. That's the only other thing. Peter Howell hadn't seen Justice League Part 1. And maybe nobody has. That we've seen Zack Snyder's Justice League. I don't know what part of that would have been Part 1. Maybe we only saw Part 1. But yeah, so at the time, he wouldn't have seen Justice League Part 1. So I'm a little confused as why he mentions that. Also, I'm a little confused about what that last sentence means. I think it's poorly written, to be honest. It seems like a run-on sentence. Probably, maybe would have, if I was editing this, I might have put I might have put a period after a quote, due next year, and ended that thought, and then start the next sentence with Batman v Superman amounts to. I think it's a little too chaotic, that thought. So breaking it up, I think, would have been helpful to the reader. And just breaking down some of these definitions of these words, these big words, these $20 words that Peter's using. So elephantine or elephantine means having, I almost said ginormous, having enormous size or strength. Now, he's probably using this as a negative for how long the film was. Little did he know that there was a 3-hour version of this film at the time. But I guess 2.5 hours was too long for him. But I like that word also means having enormous strength. That to me is a positive. If you would describe BVS as elephantine, and I would argue that it means it has enormous strength. It's a strong film. So I think that's actually a good descriptive word for BVS, personally, in my opinion. And then he also uses the word innervating, which means lacking physical, mental, or moral vigor. The only way that, I hate to say this, but what you put into a film is what you're going to get out of it. So if you don't think it has any vigor, maybe that's not on the film. All right, so we're going to go back into the chat to see what is going on here. Let's see. Thank you guys for guys and ladies for helping me count in the chat. Let's see. David says there was actually more than one joke in the trailers. That's true. A lot of those clips that we saw were in those trailers. So that is strange. I don't know why. I honestly couldn't tell you why they say there's only one joke. Let's see. All right, let's see. Yeah, Mask of Shy mentions the Funnel Fairy Butter Bar. Yeah, it's pretty funny in my opinion because he's testing it out with the Batman voice in the new piece of armor, and it's just such a weird bunch of words to say. I don't know if that's like an acting thing. I don't know, but yeah. So that's a good bit. Alfred had a lot of great moments. So let's see. Andy says Batman being shook is hilarious. Makes me laugh because he thought he was in control. He thought that kryptonite was going to take care of business, and it did for a little while. Let's see. Yeah, and also Jesse hitting Henry in the chest. It's funny, especially if you hear the pounding of the chest. You hear that kind of sort of deep pounding that happens. Let's see. Oh, yeah, this is also a good moment. I remember I laugh when Bruce asks Alfred what's happening, and Alfred's like, how should I describe it? Yeah. Because, I mean, if you saw that like Alfred did, you'd be like, I don't know, this is the weirdest thing I've ever seen. So, yeah, I think that's good. Yeah, and I think this is a fair thing to point out. These might be jokes for people who don't need to have things basically handed to them on a platter. I think these are jokes that are written in character and for the situation. And there are a couple of bantery jokes in the film, but it wasn't the same thing that you might come to expect from an MCU film. It's very different. But to say that there weren't any jokes at all, except for one, which was never explained which one that was, I think that's inaccurate and actually false. So yeah, anybody who expected explicit jokes and gags will be disappointed. Let's see. All right, let me see if let's see. David also asks, Rebecca, remember the usage of monster earlier? I do. Wonder if it's used as an adjective to mean big in a bad way. Yeah, I think that could have been what he was trying to communicate. I still think it's not really a critique to say that there was a monster in this film and therefore it's a bad movie. That it's not a critique. It's just a plot. It's a plot point in the film. But that seems to be coming up a lot in these reviews. That's why it's such a negative thing, is because Doomsday was there. Okay. Well, we managed to do this under an hour. I'm really surprised by that. But we did it, you all. We did it. So I think that's going to do it for this week's review and analysis from the top critics of Rotten Tomatoes, specifically from Peter Howell of the Toronto Star. If you missed this live and you're watching the replay, I hope you'll consider sharing your thoughts in the comment section below. Keep it nice and chill and polite. And thank you all for joining me in the live chat today and sharing your thoughts about the comedy and different aspects of this review. And I guess I'm going to wrap up this live stream by letting voiceover Rebecca take over. And I'll see you in the next review. If you would like to see more of these live streams, make sure to subscribe to this YouTube channel at youtube.com/duckmilkprod. If you'd like to keep in touch with me personally, you can follow me on Instagram at The Derby Kid and on Vero at Derby Kid. You can hear my thoughts on the CW Supergirl TV series and all things Kara Zor-El over at Supergirl Radio by visiting supergirlradio.com, subscribing wherever you listen to podcasts, or subscribing to the DC TV Podcast YouTube channel, which you can find at youtube.com/DCTV Podcasts. Also, please check out the Justice League Universe podcast for in-depth analysis on the DCEU films, including Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice. And before I go, I hope that this live stream video series will inspire you to think more critically and thoughtfully about film and storytelling. I'd like to leave you with this quote from C.S. Lewis's book titled An Experiment in Criticism. The truth is not that we need the critics in order to enjoy the authors, but that we need the authors to enjoy the critics. My name is Rebecca Johnson, and I love Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice. And I am publishing a series of videos exploring the reasons why I am such a fan of Zack Snyder's film. In this series, you'll find my thoughts on topics that matter to me, like Larry Fong's cinematography, character analysis on Lex Luthor and Lois Lane, the Christian imagery, what I find hopeful about the movie, and yes, I'll address the critical reception. So if you're interested in any of those topics, I hope you will get something out of this series and find out why Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice has had such a profound, heartfelt, and inspiring impact on my life.